Good day. My name is Richard Lowe, the Writing King. I'm a ghostwriter, a book coach, and a LinkedIn branding expert. And I'm here today with Ginny Carter. She's a best-selling ghostwriter of 25 books, a book coach, and an award-winning author in her own right. She takes entrepreneurs, coaches, and consultants from everyday experts to respected thought leaders and in-demand speakers through the book process to grow their reputation and expand their business. She's the author of Your Business, Your Book, and How to Write a Self-Help Book. Welcome, Ginny.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Excellent. Well, I'm happy you decided to come on. And why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, I have a background originally in marketing. I was working on the dark side for quite a while. So I worked at various different companies, big ones, small ones. And for about 18 years, I did that kind of role in the corporate world, if you like. And then I left and started working as a social media manager. And this was at a time when social media was really exploding and a lot of companies needed social media expertise, but the smaller businesses couldn't really afford to have their own in-house experts. So I worked as a freelancer managing their social media accounts for them. So posting, tweeting for them, building their audiences, using my marketing expertise, I guess, to do that job. And I really enjoyed it and it was going very well, but it just became a bit relentless, really. Social media isn't something that you can get away from very easily. So so I decided that I needed a new direction, and I really didn't know what it should be. And so I worked with a coach actually to help me to work out, what I wanted to do with my life. And so I through a process of exploration, I kind of realized that one of the things that my clients always said to me was, you sound just like us when you're posting for us, when you're tweeting and blogging and so on, you come across in our voice really well. How do you do it? And I just remember thinking, well, I thought everyone could do that. I didn't think it was really that big a deal. But I realized then that actually I did have this talent for writing in other people's voices. And I'd always loved writing. I did an English degree many years ago, and I've always been a big writer and a big reader. And so the idea came to me that I could be a ghostwriter for business books because I had all this business experience. So I slowly transitioned away from the social media into business book ghostwriting. And what I realized, I think, once I started to do that was actually this was this very diverse world of books, business books. I mean, it encompasses many things. It can be books about HR or IT or how to be an entrepreneur. And, there's all sorts of different things you can write about. But also things like personal development topics, and memoirs as well, particularly business memoirs, memoirs about for people's lives where they've had a lot of career success and they want to talk about how they've achieved what they have. So these are all business books in their own way. And I've really enjoyed getting to know all of those different niches and markets and genres of books. So kind of that's a potted history, really, of how I've got to where I am now.
Well, very nice. It sounds like an interesting journey. Yeah, I started ghostwriting 10 years ago, and I jumped off the cliff. I just quit my job and jumped straight into it. And it was scary.
Yeah, it is. Well, you're very brave. I admire you.
Yeah, and I made it work and got some big clients to begin with, which was very helpful. Mm-hmm. And well, one thing I'm curious about is you're a ghostwriter. How do you promote yourself?
Yeah, well, I suppose my social media experience really helped with that. So I had the right skills already lined up. But the thing when I first started that I'd never done was promoted myself very well. So that was a big learning curve to kind of get over that. Oh, I've got to talk about myself and sell myself, and are people gonna think I'm really arrogant if I say I'm good at what I do? And I had to sort of, maybe that's a British thing, I don't know. Maybe I had to get over that. So the way I mainly promote myself now is through my website and my blog. Mainly clients find me through that. Also through LinkedIn, I enjoy that. And of course, talking to people like your good self on podcasts and interviews. And that's another way to promote what I do. So I say that those are the main areas. I'm not a big Instagram or Facebook person. And I've never found things like those kind of channels are very helpful for me. And I think because it's more of a business audience, LinkedIn is just a better place to talk about what I do.
Yeah, I actually got to start with LinkedIn Makeover when I first started out, and they do LinkedIn profiles for people. So I did about 300 of them. I got trained by Donna Sedula herself. She wrote down LinkedIn for Dummies, and so I got a bit of a start there. So I was naturally favoring LinkedIn. I'm spreading out to Facebook now, but I'm doing C2C or B2C,
Hmm.
business to consumer, because that's where my writing coaching is aimed at writers.
Hmm.
And then for of course B2B with on LinkedIn, and I'm expanding into YouTube because all
Oh,
these videos.
yeah.
And it's a brave new world.
Yeah, and I think one of the lovely things about being a writer is that there's always something new to learn. I mean, I've started doing more memoirs now, and that's a really different skill set, I think, to business books and personal development books. And you have to work with people in a different way, with clients who've got much more personal issues they want to talk about, and it's a much more of a immersive experience, I guess. So I'm learning all sorts of new things in that, and every book is just a new journey. I mean, it's just a whole new set of challenges, new set of wonderful things you learn. I think the great thing about being a ghostwriter is that you get to become a world expert in something for 6 months while you're doing it, and you just learn so much, and then of course you then put it to one side and start on the next book.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I wrote books about the metaverse, and I'd never even seen the metaverse before. I didn't know what it was. I mean, other than the vague stuff you read in the news. And by the time the book was done, I'm an expert on the metaverse. And
Wow, that's brilliant.
then it's off to something else, then it's AI, and then it's security, and then it's children's book, and now I'm doing a memoir. Yeah, that's always interesting. I just did the first draft. He's not thrilled with it, so have to tell him it's a first draft.
Yeah.
We're going to go through it and fix it up. Don't worry, and we're going to spend a couple hours together tomorrow. You know the drill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not. I have to explain to him. I'm not you, so I don't know your life very well. I got some details wrong. Of course I did, because I'm not you.
Yeah.
And he got it. We'll talk tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, but what's really rewarding about working with the client as a ghostwriter is that you kind of, when you get it right, eventually, there will be ups and downs along the way, and it won't always go smoothly. But at the end, when you've got it right and they're really pleased with their book, it's like you've kind of made their dream come true, really, isn't it? They've got their book that they've been wanting for years sometimes. And there's just a real sense of satisfaction in that, which I love.
You have to tell you about my first book. I was working for a ghostwriting company, and he was paying the whole $1,000 for a book. And then, his first one. And then I left there because $1,000 wasn't enough to do all the revisions and things. And my boss told me, you're not going to find business. You're not a marketer. It's not going to be easy for you, blah, blah, blah. The next day I had a $10,000 contract in my hand. The very next day, 2 days later, I had a $15,000 contract in my hand. It's like, boss, I think you're wrong. Or excuse me, ex-boss, I think you're wrong. And pretty much sometimes, I'm sure you know this, it's feast or famine sometimes. Sometimes, like now, it's a little bit tougher to get business, I guess, the economy. But last year it was pouring in, and it just depends on whatever, and I'm sure you're aware of this.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I found during the pandemic, I had a lot of work because suddenly people were sitting at home, and this book that they'd been vaguely thinking about for the last however many years, suddenly they thought, well, now I've got tons of work with a ghostwriter on that, or with a coach, because I coach people as well. And so that was a very busy patch for me. And I've been steadily working really for the last 5 years. I mean, the first few years, the first sort of 3 or 4 years, it was probably a bit more touch and go because it was either feast or famine, as you say. But I think I've built up enough of a reputation now that I'm, getting steady work coming through. And I can also, to a certain extent, choose what I do as well, which I think makes a massive difference. And if something comes along but I just think that's not for me, it's a lovely feeling to be able to just do the work you enjoy, isn't it?
It's the best, isn't it? Where you can say, sorry, I can't take on that project. I am not going to write your book about the mafia informant and stuff, because I do like my life. I got one of those, and it's like, no. Well, I'll give you lots of money. And he named a figure, 6 figures. And I was like, no, not going to do it.
Well, that's your prerogative, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it happens in the ghostwriting world. You say
Yeah.
you've also written some of your own books. What are they about?
Yeah, so I've written two books. One's called Your Business, Your Book. So it's a book. It's a book about how to write a book. It's a book about how to write your own business book. So it's most people who write a business book, they want to share their knowledge and help people, but they also want to make themselves an authority figure in their field. And so this is all about how you do that. And then I've got another book, How to Write a Self-Help Book, which is coming out towards the end of September. And that's really based actually on my experience of being a judge for a book awards, which I did for a few years on the trot. And I did do a fair bit of judging for the personal development category in that awards. And one of the things I realized when I read, must have been about between 50 and 100 personal development books over the space of 2 years. I mean, it was like really kind of baptism of fire, and a lot of them made the same mistakes. Some were very good, but the ones that didn't work, they all did the same things wrong. And I thought, well, why didn't I write a book about how to do it right? So that's where that came from. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see how it goes.
Very nice. Yes, yes. When I first started, I had the idea that I could make it as an author. So I wrote and wrote and wrote. I wrote like 60 books.
Wow.
Yeah, and again, about 2 years. They're not long books, most of them, but some of them are. And found out that the problem with making it as author is promoting the book. And I put my heart and soul into one on security, and it sold like 10 copies because there's like 10 billion security books out there. And what are you going to do? You just live and learn. So I lived and learned.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing about being a ghostwriter is you just hand the manuscript over to your clients and then they go off and do all of that themselves. Yes, I mean, I do sympathize. I'm not a natural book promotion, and I'm a bit lazy with it, really, to be honest. I probably could do more, but I just find it really satisfying to have my own book out there, and I enjoy it. And if people want to buy it, that's great. And if they don't, well, that's a shame. But actually, I don't really see having a lot of sales as being the mark of success for this book. It's more about does it help people, and also do I gain any clients from it? Because the first with Your Business, Your Book, in fact, there was one client I gained who he said he went onto Amazon, typed in how to write a business book or something along those lines, came up with my book along with a few others, bought I think 3 books, decided he really liked mine, liked my approach, and contacted me, and then I became his ghostwriter for his next book. So I mean, that if I hadn't have written that book, that job would never have come to me. And that's how it works, isn't it?
That is how it works. I got my feelers all over the place, just like you've got to, and somebody comes in, how did you find me? Well, I found you from this and this and this. I'm like, I wrote that like 5 years ago. I totally forgot about it.
And it still is the gift that never stops giving. And I often think as well that people look in various different places when they want to work with someone. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's a ghostwriter or a leadership coach or whatever else it is, or a LinkedIn expert, and they often look in different places. And if you've got a website here, and you've got a profile on a different site there, and you've got a book there, and you've got a blog over there, a podcast, people just join the dots and they slowly get led to you. But the less places you are, the less likely people are to find you, because you never know where they're going to start.
That's the approach that I'm taking, although it can be tiring to have so many channels.
Yeah, and you have to know where to draw the line, don't you? There has to be a stop point, and everybody's got their own personal line.
Well, since it's just me and I'm hiring a VA, a virtual assistant, and I hired a lead generator also for LinkedIn, so he's busy creating leads. He's doing a pretty good job at it.
Oh, okay. Right. That's interesting.
Somebody from India.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that goes. But other than that, I don't tend to hire people because I'm a solopreneur, and it's a lot of work. Yeah. It's a lot of work, and I have to draw the line, as you say, in certain places.
Yeah.
As do you, I'm sure.
Yeah. I find my line becomes kind of closer and closer to me as the years go by. I'm less and less inclined to sort of do things, but actually I do think sometimes it is good to do something new, a bit like I'm doing now with you. I haven't done one of these for a while, and it's nice. I think it does us all good to step outside the zone for once, doesn't it?
I got the idea to help promote authors and ghostwriters and things, and get to know them a little better, and
Yeah.
because we're all part of the same community, you know, we don't have to cut each other's throats, so to speak. Well,
Yeah,
that can be fun, but you know.
no, I think it's really great getting to know other writers. There's nothing like it, and it's a very. I mean, I've always found it to be a very supportive community.
Yeah.
The whole book world, you know, is a nice world to be in, I think, and people generally help each other out.
So let me ask you a question that's on a lot of people's minds, I'm sure, and I'll ask it a lot of in the future also for this podcast is, how's AI affecting your business?
Oh, yeah, no, that's really interesting. Well, I mean, I've actually, at first I was probably like many writers. I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is the end, the beginning of the end, you know, might as well retire now kind of thing. And then I, in fact, actually, interestingly, this is through a book I'm ghostwriting where it's not about AI, but AI features in it fairly heavily for a business author. And he gave me a quote, which was from somebody in the tech world. I can't remember who now, but basically saying that you will lose your job to somebody who knows how to use AI before you lose it to AI. And this really, really kind of resonated with me. And I decided actually I needed to learn how to use it, because it's no good just pretending it's not going on, you know, it's happening. So I've been doing a bit of educating of myself, trying out different platforms. And actually I've been really both impressed, but also somewhat smugly kind of disappointed in what it can and can't do. So I mean, I have tried some things which have, you know, it's really stunned me with how well it's worked. And I think a lot of it is learning how to use it and how to ask it the right questions. And I found that it's helping me, you know, it's helping me be a better writer in a relatively minor way at the moment. I mean, that may change, but it's giving me ideas. I think a lot of what it's doing is it gives me suggestions, most of which I won't take because I don't think they're right or they're not good enough, but then sparks an idea to do something else. And I know a lot of people use it to help them do editing, and I've been very pleased. But again, you have to apply your own judgment. I wouldn't ever just take what it gives me and use it. And that's kind of where I am with it, really. You know, I've got a bit more of a positive attitude about it now because I think it could be helpful, but quite where it will lead the writing profession, we don't know, do we?
Well, I've been using it to, I've been using it to read. Sometimes doing an interview, it's all over the place. So it's recorded. So I take the transcript and I shove it at ChatGPT and say, make some sense of this for me. That's my prompt.
Oh, okay.
And it spits out a page and says, this is what you talked about, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, that was pretty cool. You know, because usually it takes several hours to go through those darn things.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, I'm finding it very useful for. But I'm amazed at how inconsistently stupid it is.
Okay. Yeah.
There's some times where I say I do this and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And then there's other times where it's like, what, did you turn into a brick?
Yeah. And it's the inconsistency that's the difficult thing, because it's not always the same things it gets wrong. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
It gets things wrong. I asked it for a biography of me, and it said I have 3 wives at the same time.
Wow.
Six children, and all this stuff going on. Like, you didn't actually look me up online, did you?
Or maybe there's a different person with the same name. You never know. Maybe there's another ghostwriter with the same name.
There could be.
With this rather exotic lifestyle.
Well, my dad's an artist, but he didn't pull any of that, or was an artist. He didn't pull any of that stuff in. So who knows? But it's there's a lawyer who got disbarred because his paralegal probably didn't fact check it, and the judge was furious.
Yeah. Well, us ghostwriters, we do make sure that we fact check things, don't we? And we.
What's that word again? Fact check. I'm supposed to do that? Of course. Yeah, you have to. Yeah. Although my contracts all say that that's my client's responsibility, because I am not the knowledge expert. I still obviously.
Yeah, no, same here as well. But we do it, but we don't take responsibility, the ultimate responsibility.
I'm not an expert on what they're talking about. I'm translating and doing research and stuff. So it's important to keep that they understand that.
Yeah.
But let's see. Where do you see your journey going as you go forward?
Well, I'd like to. I mean, I really enjoy what I'm doing. I like to do more of the same, really. But I would like to do more memoirs. I'm finding those really rewarding and interesting, quite challenging. But I always think it's good to keep challenging yourself as a writer. It's you can get stale otherwise if you keep doing too many of the same things. And I just want to keep on working for more interesting people. I find that every time I start a book, I always wonder, well, am I going to be able to do this? Is this going to be interesting? And then the more you get into a subject, the more interesting it gets. I think it's almost impossible to write a whole book about something without getting really fascinated by it. It's just the nature of it, really, because you just become immersed in it. So yeah, more of the same for me, I think.
You haven't gone into the world of technical writing, which can be really dry. I offer technical
I've done
writing.
a bit of that. I've done a bit of that, and I do quite enjoy making kind of boring things interesting. But there is sometimes only so much you can do. I do quite agree. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe that wouldn't be my thing.
It's pretty much why I get hired technical writing occasionally, is because they simply don't want to do it. It's so dry. I'm like, oh, I can do that. Whatever.
Yeah.
And cybersecurity type stuff is. I'm a cybersecurity person also, so
Okay.
I can do a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's very good. Let's see. What's your worst, or your, don't give any names, of course, but what's your most difficult client or difficult project?
Oh, I did once work with a guy who it kind of became apparent, I think, fairly early on that he didn't have as much to say as he thought he did. And so we burned through the material fairly quickly, and then he started to become quite uncooperative and not turning up for our meetings and all this kind of thing. And so in the end, we did have to sort of bring it to a close, because I can't really carry on working with you if you're going to be cancelling things at 2 minutes notice. So that was kind of my most difficult experience, but I've really not had that many, actually. Luckily, I think maybe I have been lucky. I've had the odd. I think maybe unreliable clients is always the hardest thing to deal with. People who change their mind at the last minute and decide they don't want to do a book after all, and that kind of thing. But yeah. What about you? Have you had a complete nightmare experience?
Well, the ghosting experience is frustrating when you've got a client who says, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do it, and then you never hear from them again. And I've had them ghost me after they've paid me, and then they just disappear forever. Yeah. They're gone. And that's really weird,
I know. I have had a client who paid me for the entire book and then never published it.
Happens. That's happened to me on several books.
Yeah, and that, well, same here actually. And I think my interpretation of that is they just get cold feet at the last minute and just don't want to expose themselves and don't, because it does expose you having a book, and it is a bit scary. I can't understand why somebody wouldn't make use of the manuscript they paid good money for. But
well, especially since I'm I've self-published over 100 books, so I can do it for them, and for an hourly rate of it's probably 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I published the darn book, and I think that they're scared off by the publishing process. They get really busy because I'm work with CFOs and CTOs and things like that.
Yeah.
My nightmare experiences have been I haven't really had that many, mostly in the pre-sales, where I've had the mafia guy who was a confidential informant, and he wanted to expose everybody. I'm like, nope, not going to do that. I've had several people try and con me, where they pretend like they're a client, and they say, okay, we're going to send you a bunch of money, and then they've sent a check that's way too big, and they want a refund.
That old ruse,
twice.
Yeah.
And I'm a security guy, so thank you for the check. I'm going to watch it bounce to the ceiling, and you can have fun with your life.
Yeah.
That was the first time. Was a $190,000 project, and he wrote a check for $220,000, and it obviously didn't go through, and I knew it wasn't going to.
Yeah. Oh no! Wow.
Those kind of things. I wasn't getting excited about it because nobody pays a whole price on a $200,000 project all at once. Never.
No, exactly. I mean, that would be crazy. Yeah.
That is red flag number one.
Yeah.
He didn't even negotiate, which was red flag number two. They at least want to negotiate.
Yeah.
But most of my clients, virtually all of them, have been pretty good.
Yeah.
They've been good clients. They're pretty understanding.
Yeah. Well, most people are good. Most people are good to work with. Most people are nice people. Most people are reasonable. And the beauty of what we do is we get to talk to some very interesting people. So
I think the most interesting thing is when I get a memoir from somebody who's using it as therapy. And I'm working on one of those now, and I have to remind him, I am not a therapist.
Yeah.
you need to back off from this concept. You know, and
Yeah.
I had a lady who, it was a really tough book about really bad things that women go through, and she went through the worst that you can possibly imagine. And if you can imagine it, it's worse. And she was just crying on every interview and stuff. And finally, we just said, we both looked at each other and said, we can't do this, because I'm not your therapist. I'm your writer, and you're just burning hours.
Yeah.
That's somebody who's not your therapist.
Yeah.
And she agreed, and that was best for both of us.
Yeah.
I liked the book. It was going to be a really good book.
I know, it's a shame, isn't it? Yeah. Well, maybe she'll come back to it when she's in a better place.
Maybe, doubt it, but maybe. Maybe. She's hopefully in a good place now. She's a really nice person.
Yeah.
And she went through hell. So, you know, it's just interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. People go through such terrible things, and you never quite realize it until you do a job like ours, when you talk to somebody who's, you know, been through really extraordinary life experiences, very tough experiences some people have.
I thought I went through some tough experiences, but now that I'm a ghostwriter,
gives you a different outlook, doesn't it?
Mine was tough. There was some people who's like beyond tough, and they're still alive and they're still wanting to write a book. So, okay, fine. You know, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
You know, I got first world problems. You know,
yeah,
that term.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm not really worried about where my next meal's coming from. I'm not worried about anything like that.
Yeah.
Other people are.
Yeah.
And that's not first world problems. I'm not going to worry about Apple's coming out with a new smartphone and they changed their cable. Oh my God, you know, like other people do.
Yeah.
Like whatever, you know.
But also, there's something reassuringly old-fashioned about books as well, isn't there? So, you know, it's always just, you always go back to that same world that's been around for hundreds of years, and I think it keeps you grounded, actually, as well. It keeps you grounded in what really matters and what people have been doing for centuries.
And you see the books behind me; they're all hardcovers.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, very impressive display you've got there.
Yeah, and of course I haven't read any of them, but I intend to.
Oh, that's all right. Just, you know, you don't want to come clean on that. Just get the collected works of Charles Dickens behind you, whatever.
No, it's more like you know, the complete comic book collection of some artists from the 20s and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
1920s, not the 2020s.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Dennis the Menace cartoons.
Oh, I love those. Yeah.
The whole set's up there.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Took me a bit to find those, and then some other ones, and the whole Dune series, and, you know, Game of Thrones and stuff like that.
Okay. I think we know where your interests lie, don't we, then? Yeah.
See, I'm a geek. I like Star Trek. Nerds like Star Wars. You see, there's a difference.
Oh, I see. Oh, right. This is a subtle distinction that had escaped me. So there you go. You learn something every day.
I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the way I put it. Star Trek tends to be more science-y, and Star Wars tends to be more fantasy.
Okay, right. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And the way they're written and stuff. Anyway, yeah, I'm doing on my blog. I put out a blog every day, and I'm putting out stuff about critiquing movies and the writing of movies.
Oh, okay.
And from a positive viewpoint. I'm trying not to be too negative. Some movies, it's real hard to be too. It's easy to be too negative because they give me lots of ammunition.
Yeah. I think actually sometimes it's hard. This thing is to say something nice and to give constructive, or to be nice about things, actually, because often it's difficult to hone in on what you like about something, whereas you can easily see what you don't like about it. So I think the hardest thing is to be really positive about a book or a movie or whatever, and explain what really works, because often you just don't actually understand it yourself.
Well, I'm doing these articles as like I did one on Captain Marvel, which is a pretty terrible movie, and I did it as a writing lesson. So here's what you need to do to avoid falling into this trap of a flat character with no character arc at all. She doesn't grow through the whole thing. She has no personality. Blah blah blah. Not the actress, the character. Don't know about the actress, because I'm whatever I feel about the actress is not part of this. This is about the writing. And so they're lessons for writers. and it's working pretty well. It's working pretty well.
No, I find it interesting as well. So when you see something that doesn't work, to analyze why. So I often go. There's a local film club that I go to, where it's movies that didn't quite hit the big time, and sometimes there's a reason for it. So it was great, but there was just one flaw. And it's interesting from a writer's perspective to think, well, what was that flaw? Why didn't that work? And then you realize how hard it is to do a really good movie, or a really good book.
Movies are tough because you're in a writer's room, so it's not just you. It's a lot of people writing a movie. But why did Lord of the Rings work and Rings of Power is an utter failure? And Rings of Power had $1 billion.
Yeah.
And Lord of the Rings didn't have anywhere near that. I wrote an article on that. What's the problem? What's bad about, what could be better about Rings of Power, and why does Lord of the Rings shine where it doesn't?
Yeah.
No offense to anybody who likes Rings of Power, of course. it has to do with the writing. It's the writing. It's written poorly.
Okay. Yeah.
The cinematography, oh my God, the clips from there are just breathtaking. You know where the $1 billion went.
Yeah.
But
they don't pay the writers well enough, do they, compared to all the special effects that they put in?
There are some parts of it where I think they hired their small children to write it.
Yeah.
It's that bad.
Yeah.
And if I had $1 billion, I would certainly chip away some money for some better writers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we would, of course, because we know what good writing entails.
Yeah, but I guess that extra $50,000 for somebody who could actually write was too much for the budget of $1 billion. So.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Anyway, we're coming up on the end. So any last words to your fans? I'm sure you have many fans.
Oh, well, goodness, you're talking about me like I'm a movie star myself now. I just want to say, if you've got a book that's waiting to come out, just get whatever help you need to do it. So it could be a coach, it could be a ghostwriter, it could be an editor, it could be you just need to free some space up for yourself to write it. But I just talk to so many people who have this desire to write a book and haven't done it for one reason or another. So just work out, what is it that's stopping you, and go for it. And if you want to talk to me, then talk to me. And if you want to talk to Richard, talk to Richard, and just do it.
I have so many potential clients come to me and say it's their lifelong dream, literally their one bucket list item, and then they decide not to do it. And it's like, it's your lifelong dream. Get a writing coach, get somebody, or write it yourself. Just get it written.
Yeah.
They never do.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's a difference. And I do work with many people as a coach who either get their book written or they don't. There's kind of just two types of people. I work with one guy who had a terrible accident, knocked off his bike partway through writing his book. It ended up breaking his arms. He couldn't even hold couldn't write, couldn't type, and he still managed to finish his book. He just still did it because he was always going to do it. And then other people who just get bored partway through and just don't carry on. So maybe it's not for you. If you don't want to finish, then maybe that was the way it was meant to be. But yeah,
I met a guy named John Morrow, and John Morrow is a quadriplegic.
Oh yes, I know. Yeah, I know. I have him. Yeah,
he does blogging. He sells blogging. He went from nothing to a $75 million business in just a few years with no feeling in his arms or legs and only talking with a machine.
Yeah.
It's like, if he can do that, I have no excuses.
Yeah, that's quite extraordinary, isn't it?
I don't know what's happened to him. It's been years since I've looked him up, but he always astounded me. And he was a nice guy.
Yeah, I've done some of his trainings as well at his blogging.
Me too.
Yeah, but he's a very inspiring guy. Hugely talented and really capable.
Well, I got to run. It's been a great interview.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed it. Yeah. It should be. I'm going to go ahead and thank you for coming on board.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you for having me, Richard.
And it's been a great interview. Thanks.